We begin with the breaking news out of Russia. The head of the mercenary group Wagner, Yevgeny Prigozhin, is believed to be among 10 people killed in a plane crash. The plane was en route to St. Petersburg when it crashed in the Tver region 30 minutes after taking off from Moscow. Russia's Civil Aviation Agency confirming Prigozhin was on the list of 10 passengers on board the light aircraft. Sky's Diana Magnay is following developments from Moscow.
We understand that 8 bodies have been found at the crash site, but we were told that 10 passengers, or 3 pilots and 7 passengers, were on the list of those on board. We also understand from Telegram channels that Dmitry Utkin, who was essentially Prigozhin's number 2 at Wagner, was on board. But all of this does need further confirmation. It would be extremely convenient for the Kremlin, for Yevgeny Prigozhin now to be no more. I think he has been a massive problem for Vladimir Putin ever since certainly the very short-lived mutiny that he launched on Moscow on June the 23rd and 24th, but also in the weeks and months before, when he very loudly and publicly across social media railed against the way Russia's operation in Ukraine was being conducted and against the Russian army leadership. And Vladimir Putin came out and called him a traitor, and all those that followed him a traitor. And traitors are the one thing that Vladimir Putin cannot abide, and yet somehow through miracles of mediation by Alexander Lukashenko, Prigozhin was allowed to go pretty much scot-free, seemed to have the license to travel around Russia still, popped up in Belarus where he was meant to be in exile, but popped up in St. Petersburg at the Russia-Africa Summit, also held a meeting or was invited to a meeting with Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin 5 days after the mutiny with other Wagner commanders. But in the intervening time between that mutiny and now, his operations have been disbanded, and what was supposed to happen was that he would essentially keep some of his forces in Belarus but focus his operations in Africa. What we understand, though, was that the Ministry of Defense and Russia more broadly was trying in Africa to recruit Wagner soldiers to their own ranks and essentially take over Wagner's operations there too. I think that for Putin, Prigozhin was a pain, an embarrassment. He had shown him to be remarkably weak in the way that this mutiny showed up Putin for not having recognised that this was about to happen, for not having listened loudly enough or closely enough to someone who, more than anybody else in this country, discredited the armed forces, which is something that you go to jail for. And now we have this news that he is, in fact, 2.5 months after that mutiny, on the passenger list, supposedly dead after his plane crashed just after takeoff.
A statement issued by Russia's Civil Aviation, meanwhile, has confirmed the details that an investigation has been launched into a plane crash that occurred in the Tver region. According to the passenger list, the name and surname of Yevgeny Prigozhin is among them. That's where that confirmation has come from. Meanwhile, a spokesperson from the White House's National Security Council has said, "We have seen the reports. If confirmed, no one should be surprised. The disastrous war in Ukraine led to a private army marching on Moscow, and now it would seem to this." And Joe Biden spoke a short time ago reiterating that statement.
I don't know for a fact what happened, but I'm not surprised.
Do you believe?
There's not much that happens when Russia is not behind, but I don't know enough to know the answer. I've been working out for the last hour and a half.